Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started straight away. I am going to put everyone on spotlight who's going to be speaking so that it's nice and easy for you to see everyone and makes it very, oops, my goodness, I'm so sorry. I've just lost the screen. I will be with you. Oh, there's Megan. Excellent. Lovely, lovely. So I'm assuming you can all hear me and see us. So thank you, thank you. I'd love you to be as interactive as possible. So please, put your details in the chat, connect with each other, ask questions. Uh, you know, feel free to share anything that you are hearing that's interesting. I find that really helps when you're attending a webinar to kind of reinforce the concept. And we really want you to be thinking about, lots of people attend webinars and then you kind of go back to the normal day-to-day grind and not much happens. But we'd really like you to walk away from today with one or two little pieces that you can start implementing, and you can actually really kind of make positive change in your medical practice. So thank you for joining us today. My name's Jenny Boymore and I'll be facilitating the discussion. I am from the Proven Group. We are a people and culture organisation. We help medical centres and all sorts of different other organisations with their people needs. So the ins and outs of the compliance to do with HR and everything that goes around employing and contracting people, and then also all of the stuff that we like to refer to as the fun stuff, which is the culture and the values and the piece that really helps organisations thrive. So, in saying all of that, thank you all for joining us. As I said, please use the chat and be as interactive as you can, as you like. And we will be putting little bits and pieces in there. If you do have questions that come up, we'll be following the chat as the session's going on. So please, feel free to put questions in there and we will address them as they come up. I'd like to introduce the amazing people on the panel today who are the experts who'll be sharing a whole range of different perspectives. And really today, our whole focus is on about attracting the right people into your medical clinic. So that's the focus we're going to be really looking at things today. And, anything else that comes up along the way, we'll discuss happily too. So we'll start with you, Sarah. Do you want to introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself and where you fit into the whole medical practice world?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So my name's Sarah Bartholomeusz. I founded and run a legal services firm called You Legal, and we work exclusively with medical and health practices nowadays, which we love. And look, my passion for helping protect medical practices comes from being from a medical family of surgeons, GPs, dentists, physios, nurses. Actually, everyone is in medical except me. I'm the black sheep, but it's a real passion, and we just love working in the space. So much so that I wrote a book a few years ago called Growing a Medical Practice from Frustration to a High Performance Business, which Jenny is holding up now. And that's available on our website. If you haven't seen it, please feel free to have a look. And I'm excited about this conversation today. I actually think all of us are going to learn something, even the presenters.
Totally agree with you. Megan, I'll get you to jump on now. You've got a different role in the medical space. Share with us a little bit about you.
So my name is Megan Shorter. I founded People Medical Consulting back in 2014. I've been in medical recruitment since 2012, specializing in general practice and primarily working with international medical graduates. So I'm a bit of a rat. That's probably the worst animal to call myself, but I like to know everything about everything. And so we specialised in making sure that we understand all of the ins and outs of recruiting IMGs. So the 19AAs and the 19ABs, Medicare legislation and the APRAs and the supervision. And that's something that my team and I are so incredibly passionate about. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today because we've got some great people on the panel, and recruitment obviously is one of the most important things when it comes to running a medical centre. So it's close to my heart, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you guys more about it today.
Thank you. Belinda, can you share with us a little bit about you and your area of expertise and passion?
I'd love to, Jenny. Thanks so much. Firstly, I just should say I haven't founded anything, so I feel a little bit out of it, but there you go. I'm the CEO. Thank you. I feel better now. I'm the CEO of the Proven Group, and we're a human resources consultancy. And so we work with small businesses, small to medium businesses with staff, and we help them with everything people related. So whether recruitment is often the start of the process with that, but even before recruitment, there's an attraction piece, which is actually totally separate to recruitment. And so having a chat about that today, what is it out there in the market to really make you stand out as an employer of choice, as a place that people want to come and work, so that if and when you do have a role that you need filled, it's easy because people are coming to you as opposed to you having to go to the market. That's the ideal, wouldn't you say, Jenny?
That is completely the ideal. And, you know, this whole concept of employer of choice is thrown out in the market a lot. And, you know, someone actually said to me the other day, well, I think you've got this little logo on your banner. What does it actually mean from a practical perspective? And it's, you know, creating an environment where you love coming, I think is number one, but everyone is thriving, the organisation's thriving, the people within it are thriving, and you've really built that beautiful community. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So today is really a conversation. So it's you know, you're not going to be seeing any PowerPoints, and there's not going to be, we're not going to be testing you on anything. It really is very much a conversation about how do you attract the right people to your centre. And we see this very much as a puzzle. There are a whole range of pieces. There are some compliance elements to it. There are some, let's say, some people may call it the fluffy stuff, which, you know, isn't really so fluffy when it's really quite essential. And it's the backbone and the core of how you attract and how you really build a beautiful, thriving workplace that is achieving your goals. So for us, we really look at organisations holistically. We really look at how the strategy and the people all come together. So that's the, you know, the overlay that we're using. But really we see it as a puzzle. There are all these different pieces that need to come into play. Might ask everyone just to mute themselves. There are all these pieces that come into play. Now, Sarah, we're going to start by talking about this whole concept in the medical world of the employee and the contractor, because I think it's something that people find really, really stressful, and it's quite core to the medical centre model of having, you know, you have your team of people. So you've got your, you know, your reception team, and it might be a nursing team, and your practice manager, and a whole range of people in the employee world. And then you also have a whole range of contractors. In some places, contractors, in some places, employees. Can you talk about this? This has been a very contentious issue in the industry.
You are so right. It's a really big topic at the moment, and there are a few different ways that we see medical centres engaging with staff. And maybe I'll set up by saying in the past few years, there's been some changes in the law. We all know about the payroll tax debacle from the Thomas and Nas case, which has developed now into, I guess it's different in every state and territory how payroll tax is being applied to doctors as contractors being deemed employees in relation to the payment of payroll tax. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that's changed over the past few years is the payment of super for contractors. And it's not simple. I probably, you know, could do a whole hour webinar just on those two issues, but I'll explain the different models that we see for hiring, hiring staff and hiring doctors or engaging with doctors, as we say. So we do see doctors nowadays being employed more often. So they are often on a similar model to GP registrar, so wages and then a performance-based top-up. And then we see service agreements with independent practitioners where the practice is engaging with the doctor to provide services to that doctor. So it sort of flips that independent contractor model a little bit. And then we do see individual contractor agreements still where, and that is very common for allied health practitioners where a practice is having an allied health practitioner renting a room as well. Then we also see much more kind of arm's length, I suppose, lease agreements. And that's really much more common in the specialist space where the specialist is renting a room and maybe has their own staff person so that the reception team really aren't working in the same way as a GP practice reception team. They're maybe referring to whoever specialist receptionist is sitting at the front desk. So there's a few different models, and whether or not super is payable is it depends answer. There's a whole lot of indicators about whether someone genuinely is a contractor or an employee. And since Megan's going to be talking more about international doctors coming in, I should say that we've done a specific article on this because we have so many questions about whether or not an international doctor should be an employee or a contractor. And the answer is usually you can choose. So there might be some supervision requirements. And so there's some practices that are only going with employees, but you can have an independent contractor with that supervision requirement as well, or a services arrangement where that doctor is running their own business even. So that's probably a good start from me.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. It really becomes a really interesting conversation. So if we talk about the landscape of a medical centre where you have the employees who are providing core services to the patients and to the professionals, and you know there's this kind of ecosystem that comes together. Belinda, can we get you to talk a little bit about you know there's a piece here in terms of how people work together and the culture of the organisation. And I think, like, before we can even start talking about who are we trying to attract and who are the ideal people, it's about kind of understanding what our culture is. Can you just talk a little bit about this environment where you've got employees and our obligations to these employees, and then the contractors, and kind of this interesting puzzle that starts to emerge?
Yeah, sure. My favourite topic. So thank you very much. The cultural piece to me is the most important piece because it's the thing that you're really selling, in inverted commas, when you are when you've got a role to fill, when you're out there in the recruitment space trying to attract candidates, good candidates that are going to not only be technically great, you know, clinically great at what they do, but also are going to fit the culture that you've built. Hopefully it's a culture that you've spent time on. It's a culture that you've consciously built. It's a culture that you've thought about and it's evolved into something that you can be really proud of. Now, I use those words really deliberately, and that's because culture arises anyway, like whether you do anything positive on it or whether you do anything consciously with it or not, you will have a culture in your workplace, and you will even have subcultures if you have more than one site. or more that, or a particularly big practice that has different areas might have subcultures in it as well. So I often describe a culture as the vibe of the thing, to, quote Dennis Denuto from The Castle. It's the vibe, it's how it feels, in the place. And so what I'm introducing here is this little thing called emotions, this pesky little thing that we carry around with us every day and we don't seem to go anywhere without. Our workforce is the emotional connection to our patients and our community. So we want them to feel appreciated, to feel valued, to feel trusted, and that they live that they are part of and create a culture that's fair. And so how do you do that? There are a number of tools that will not be news to anyone on this call, I'm sure. Spending some time actually looking at your purpose and your vision statement. Why does the practice exist? Yes, it's about providing clinical outcomes to patients, but it's also more than that. People are attracted to work in the medical field per se because they care about people. And I'm talking here particularly about your admin people as well. So there's, admin people can work in pretty much any industry. What keeps bringing them back to the medical industry is the fact that they get lots of people interaction, and they get to help people when they really need it the most. And so because you've got a team, generally speaking, you've got a team of carers, then we're wanting to capitalise on that. We're wanting to ensure that they get a say, because every time somebody joins or somebody leaves your team, your culture changes. It can't not. It changes moment to moment, day to day, depending on, the mood of certain people. Anyone who's ever had someone who they felt like they were walking on eggshells with will know what I'm talking about. But the culture is the piece that helps your medical practice really stand out as a place that I want to work. So a place that I want to go, a place where, I know people that work there, they speak really highly about it. They feel really valued. They feel really heard. And if that's the case, well, then why wouldn't you want to work there? Why wouldn't you walk past 2 other medical practices to come and work here? So what we're trying to do when we talk about, attracting and recruiting the right people, it's about being really transparent about what your culture is, what's important to you, what are the values that you're building your business on, what's not negotiable for your business. Is it trust? Is it respect? Is it community? Like, what is it that really makes you stand out? And advertising that to the nth degree in the marketplace, because this is about your unique employee proposition. It's just the same as your unique selling proposition. Everyone knows that sort of out there. How are your patients choosing you, but also how are your staff choosing you? And so we want you to stand out as the place to go.
I love that. I completely love that, because ultimately, the market that we're in, and regardless of if you are employing, doctors, or you're employing a receptionist or a nurse, or, whoever it is, a practice manager, ultimately everyone wants to come to work and be happy. People obviously have different levels of content with work, but they want to come and from a compliance perspective, they need to come into a safe environment where they're really they feel psychologically safe, physically safe and psychologically safe. So this piece here really comes in before you start attracting and the recruitment process, before you can even think about who do we need to attract and recruit into our business. From a people perspective, it's important, really critical, to look at, well, who are we? What is this that we've built? And as Belinda said, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not intentional, and generally it's the leader, and there are other leaders in businesses that are sometimes official, sometimes not official, who really set the tone of the organisation. So really important to think about. The values, Belinda, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think, for a lot of people, values, we've all got values, hopefully. And the question, how did they, why are they important, and how are they even practical
Yeah, perfect. Good question, Jenny. And this is the thing that most people miss. So most organisations have values, and I'm glad you pointed out we all have values, because we do. Every individual has values. Even if you've never spent any time looking at them or trying to understand them, you will have them. There will be a line somewhere that you won't cross that will come up in your life. But if you spend, an hour, half an hour actually writing down what's important to you and what's not, they'll become pretty obvious to you pretty quickly. And the easiest way to get great stuff is to get a values alignment. So the organisation has the same values as the person. The problem with organisational values is most of the time people see them as fluffy and maybe they're nice to have on the website and perhaps up in reception. And some people even put them on their like email signatures or lanyards that they wear, and they still can't tell you what they are. It's very rare that we meet a client that actually was able to tell us what their values were and what they meant. That's the other thing. We're really big on it because values are a key tool for any practice manager and for any owner of a medical practice. They're a management tool. That's what they are. And people miss this point. They're a tool that helps the staff, helps the team to understand how they should behave with each other. And it's also the tool that you pull people up on when they have a poor behaviour. So most managers can talk to somebody if they have a poor performance, clinically or technically, the receptionist filed something in the wrong spot or, whatever. That's a technical issue, so we can give you some training or whatever we need to do on that. But when it's a behavioural issue, so-and-so comes in a bad mood and everyone just has the wide berth and nobody wants to go and talk to them for the whole day and everyone's walking around going, shh, don't upset so-and-so. That's a behavioural issue. And if you're really clear on what the values are in the organisation, if you've invested in them like a bank account, you've got to put something in it before you can take something out. If you've invested some time in communicating them and understanding them with your team, well, then they are what you have the conversation about. So-and-so, you've come in and everyone's all, did you know that you're having this effect on people? If you didn't know, well, you are. And so we need it to stop because it's not, it doesn't live teamwork. It's not respectful. It doesn't breed trust. There's lots of ways that you can actually use your values, but you've got to invest in them first.
I love it. Thank you. Megan, obviously there's a situation in the market where a lot of practices find it challenging to recruit medical professionals locally. So it might be in the area, it might be, for whatever reason, the specialty, whatever reason it might be. Can you talk us through what would someone be thinking about and what should they be asking themselves before they embark on this journey of recruiting a doctor from overseas?
So the first step is identifying what type of a doctor you can have at your practice. And I guess just leaning on what Belinda said before, I actually agree with what you guys are saying there so much, because quite often I speak to a medical centre and the first thing they say is, Megan, just get me anyone with an MBBS and a heartbeat. And I ask them questions like, okay, well, what makes your practice different? And, what do you do to build culture in your practice? Because the primary reason we see as medical centres losing their staff is actually that culture piece. So that's incredibly important. So that being the first step, being able to work out what kind of doctors you can have in your centre is really important, because we see from a recruitment perspective, a lot of doctors coming to us and saying, oh, hey, I was offered a job in a metropolitan location, but I went to get my Medicare provider number and they wouldn't give me one. Or I went to AHPRA and AHPRA said no because my supervisor didn't have their specialist AHPRA registration. So as a practice manager or a practice owner embarking on the recruitment journey, making sure that you're aware what your DPA status is, what your MMM status is, and those can be found on the Doctors Connect website. And I can definitely send out some resources. Jenny, I'll send you those resources because we've got a step-by-step how-to on how to find out what those are.
Brilliant.
understanding that will then lead you to what kind of doctor. So for example, if you're in a metropolitan location and you're classified as a M1, primarily you're going to need a doctor that has passed their fellowship and has their specialist ARPA registration. So, you know, they've already worked in Australia. If you're a DPA location, for example, that means that you're a workforce shortage area and you may be able to take on an international medical graduate, just depending on whether or not they're already in Australia or whether they're still overseas, and your ability to sponsor their visa. And again, if you're working with someone that has never worked in Australia before, you will actually need to have a doctor on site with them 100% of the time that has their fellowship to be able to provide them with a little bit of support. So that's always my first suggestion to practices. And the first couple of questions I ask is, okay, what's your DPA status? Because that defines whether or not you can have an international medical graduate. What's your M status? Because that defines whether or not you need someone with specialist ARPA registration or whether you can take a non-VR. And, you know, we kind of roll on from there.
Wow. So there's a lot of technical information there. Can you share with us a little bit about, you know, the softer piece of it? So the cultural piece, the alignment, obviously with what Belinda was talking about, but also the needs of the patients of the clinic as well. You know, sometimes it's kind of, there's that mismatch as well, that the patients in that clinic are from a particular cultural group, or they're from a, you know, particular age, and their expectations are such that, you know, there needs to be a good match there too.
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. We do have a lot of, and it's funny because a lot of practice managers will actually feel a little bit awkward asking, but they'll say to me, Megan, we really need, you know, someone that specializes in women's health. And I go, okay, so you need a female doctor. Or, you know, looking at your demographic as a practice manager or a practice owner and saying, well, you know, if we have a look at the demographics of our patients,